My now partner and I were living with two housemates in a 3-bedroom house. The house was an open plan styled house, and it was pretty modern. We had a small but long backyard that would run up along the back of the house and along to the side where the driveway comes up. We also had a carport that came off the driveway as well, but we just kept certain storage in there. We lived in that house for around 3 years. We never had trouble with the neighbours, well, not personally anyway. They all seemed to be nice and chilled out kind of people from all around the house. It was winter time, and you could smell the chimneys smoking from the different houses in the area. We didn't have a fireplace in our house. Instead, we had ducted air conditioning and heating. Now, the neighbours over the back fence to our yard were pretty rowdy. You could hear them talking and laughing a lot. They were pretty loud, and they always seemed to be out in their backyard. Every time, after doing my washing and hanging it out on the line, you could hear them talking, but you couldn't really make out what they were saying. They were talking really fast at times, almost like muttering. The more I noticed this, the more curious I became of the back neighbours. Early one morning, my partner and housemate were getting up to go to work, and I got up as well. All we could smell was toxic carbon monoxide. It was horrible. We walked out into the laundry and opened the back door. There was black smoke coming out of the back neighbour's chimney. What on earth were they burning in their fireplace? Whatever it wasn't wood, and it stunk. Although, it only lasted for another half an hour and then it stopped. My partner and housemate went to work and didn't think any more about it. A few days later, it happened again. My partner decided to call the fire department about it, but unfortunately, because fires were permitted as it was winter, there wasn't too much they could do. It wasn't happening every day, so it wasn't a cause for great concern at this time. We were all annoyed. My partner then wanted to go and confront the neighbours about it. We both went for a walk around into the next street, and as we approached the house, we could see cars, motorbikes, and heaps of other mechanical junk out the front of the yard. It was already looking really sketchy. Then their dog came out the front and started barking at us. We decided not to confront them, and we kept walking. We had started putting two and two together that maybe they had a drug lab going on in there. Maybe that's what they were burning off in their fireplace. They also seemed like they were off their heads too, so no one really knew as yet, but from what I could hear of them talking in the backyard, it was really starting to look and seem like it. It had been a few months now, and nothing sinister had been going on over the fence. It had actually been pretty quiet for quite some time. It was in the middle of spring, and it was starting to get a lot warmer. Life was going pretty good at this point, as we thought maybe those neighbours had moved out or something. I decided to go for a walk around to the next street to see if my suspicions were correct, but they weren't. There was stuff still out on the front lawn, but it looked like no one was home. The front lawn kind of looked overgrown too. Obviously, no one had been there for a while. I walked back home and told everyone what I had just saw. We all then wondered when they were going to return. It was now in the middle of summer, and it was really hot now. Luckily, in our house, we had the best ducted air conditioning, so we hardly felt the heat from outside. This particular morning, I went outside to hang out some washing. All of a sudden, I hear the man and the woman from over the fence. They were back, and they were arguing. I could hear the woman yelling from inside the house, while he would be out the backyard doing something. To me, it actually sounded like digging. Then I would hear a metal grinder or chainsaw of some sort. There was a lot of mechanical noise going on. Another week had passed and things were going all right, except One evening, I was sitting out the back in the mild sea breeze as we only lived a 10-minute walk from the beach. All of a sudden, I could hear a woman screaming. It broke the quietness. I wasn't positive where the screaming was coming from either, because it sounded soft and muffled. I could now hear a man yelling, and it was coming from the back neighbour's house. I listened carefully, and now I could hear the woman yelling back, and then all of a sudden she started screaming again. Was the man beating her? Or was she having drug withdrawals? Or was there seriously something wrong with her? I couldn't really tell, but something sinister was going on. I debated on whether to call the police or not. My housemates told me not to, because it could come back and bite us on the arse. The next day, I was out in the backyard again, and I could hear the neighbours out in their backyard talking. They didn't sound angry anymore. They were laughing and being loud again. I thought this was kind of weird. I remember this day was quite pleasant, and it was the weekend, so we were all sitting out the back in the sun. We were all talking and laughing about random stuff, and then all of a sudden, the woman from over the fence called out to us and told us she was coming around. We all kind of just looked at each other, and one of us yelled out, "Okay." About 5 minutes later, the woman walked around the back of our house and met us all in person. She had a glass of wine in her hand, so obviously she drank as well. She was being really social with us all, but at the same time, things were quite awkward. She had told us that if her and her husband were too much for us, to let them know. This progressed onto my partner asking about the black smoke. She apologised and said that there was some stuff she had to get rid of and that it wouldn't happen again. We were actually pleased to hear this. After about 20 minutes, the woman decided to leave and walk back around to her place. It was nice to finally put a face to that voice we had been hearing for months. A few days later, we could hear the back neighbours arguing again, but we decided to ignore it as it wasn't any of our business. That same night though, the man was out working in the garage. It was way past noise curfew as it was 9:30 p.m. We figured we would ignore that too, and thought that he'd be done shortly. Well, that wasn't the case. The noise went on until 11 p.m. My partner wanted to ring up and make a noise complaint, but the neighbours seemed nice, but things were sketchy. We didn't want to get involved with what they were doing. After the noise had stopped, we all went to bed, until a few hours later I woke up and it was 2:30 a.m. I needed to go to the bathroom, and all I could smell was the black smoke again. After going to the bathroom, I walked out to the laundry and opened the back door, and sure enough, there were massive pillows of black smoke coming out of their chimney. I also noticed their back light was on, and the man was outside doing something. I now knew that being at this time of the morning, and him working out in the backyard, wide awake, they were definitely on some hard drugs, and burning off again at this time of year was definitely illegal. The next morning I told my partner what I witnessed earlier that morning, and he said if they burn off again, he's going to ring the fire department again, as now it's not permitted to have fires going. They could definitely do something about it now. Well, later that evening it happened again. The fire department was called, and not long before they had arrived, the neighbours had stopped burning. We didn't know what had happened after that. Maybe they got a warning or something. Early the next morning, the neighbours were burning off again. It was time to call the police now, as they didn't listen to the fire department. And it was becoming daytime, and they were still doing it. It's like they now didn't care anymore. My partner had called the police and explained the whole situation to them. They informed my partner that they would be on their way. When they had got there, we could hear a few different policemen talking. They were out in the backyard too. Something even bigger was going on that we weren't aware of. Over the next few days, it became very quiet over the fence. Apart from hearing more policemen coming into the property, we didn't know exactly what was going on, but we all thought they had a drug lab in there. But it turns out the pair were actually arrested for possession of drugs, burning off toxic chemicals, and possession of a big bunch of firearms that had been buried in the backyard. So all those policemen were actually the bomb squad. This became really big state news on TV and on social media. We were all gobsmacked that all of this was happening just over the other side of our fence. After this all happened, we never heard or seen the back neighbours anymore, and all the sinister acts had stopped.